Welcome back, everyone. Well, it's no secret to anyone who watches Look TV or LookTVOnline.com that we're very concerned and want to be involved with this opioid and heroin epidemic that's plaguing our community. And joining me today is Lieutenant Bob Jillson, Saratoga Police Force. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
Very nice to have you here.
I appreciate you inviting me.
We have been talking to a lot of people, all walks of life. We've talked to the Sheriff of Saratoga County, Sheriff up in Warren County, Mayor of Saratoga, supervisors. I don't want to overstate the case, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but if ever the word epidemic seemed to be appropriate here, this would be it. That we've got a situation with opioid and heroin addiction right here in our own community that 20 years ago you would have scratched your head and said, nah, no possible way.
No. Listen, 20 years ago on the streets of Saratoga, if someone says, like, I know someone who's selling heroin, we would have said, you're crazy. There's no heroin up here. Unfortunately, things have come 180, and nowadays it's commonplace to hear that, unfortunately. And it's part of our way of life and our way of doing business now, what we have to deal with on the streets here. All the ones you talked about, Warren County, Washington County, they're all our partners in this fight against, as you said, the epidemic, and it's a tough battle. Yeah,
I bet it is. And if you want to know, you always say, oh, not in my yard, it's not going to affect me and my neighbors and whatever. I think the word you use is that it doesn't care. Addiction doesn't care. You can be any age. A story I heard in Warren County about an 11-year-old girl being addicted to heroin. Try to put those words together. All ages, all races, all income levels, correct? That's what you see.
You're right. You're right. All shapes and sizes. No community's immune to this. Saratoga Springs, Warren County, Washington County. It's in our backyards. It's on our streets, and it's a harsh reality that we all have to deal with.
It's really even hard to talk about, Bob. I'm telling you, because you think to yourself, I'm of the 60s, right? So we were the drug generation, smoke a little weed and whatever, and to just hear that kids get addicted today because people say, oh, they used to tell you that marijuana was dangerous. Now it's legal in Colorado. There's nothing wrong with heroin. I got news for you, man. We never talked about heroin. It was just that everybody just knew how dangerous it was.
No, Jesse, I hear you. I mean, when we first started hearing about this, it crept its way here to Saratoga. The first thing we had to do was educate ourselves on it because it wasn't something that we had up here. It's like heroin. What are we dealing with? Whether we're talking to other law enforcement agencies. As law enforcement, we've got the small piece of the whole solving this epidemic problem. But we had to bring ourselves up to speed. Part of that was getting ourselves educated, like I was talking about, and to say, what's going on here? Why is this happening, and how do we deal with it? And what are the signs, what are the symptoms of the users, the sellers? It's a little bit different. I mean, we've been dealing with drug dealers for quite a long time here, just in general. But with the heroin thing, it's a little bit different. It is.
Sure it is. Well, with the heroin thing, you really, again, the drug dealers almost look like drug dealers. You're dealing with kids, you're dealing with people in their 20s and 30s, which I would imagine would be the most vulnerable slot, right? People, young adults trying to work their way through love, work their way through jobs, working their way through disappointment, finding themselves, self-esteem, those kinds of issues. And all of a sudden somebody's waving a shiny object in front of them and more susceptible to want to try something new, take a challenge. Obviously, when I was talking to Joe DeGroni, the superintendent of Boston Spa School System, and he was saying how important education is. And I'm sure that in a classroom you can define education pretty clearly, but I would imagine across the board that education would be an important thing in terms of prevention.
Oh, it's a big part of it, Jesse.
Yeah.
And it's not just something that comes through the classroom. It's something that comes at the kitchen table with your family members or out to lunch with friends. Those are the key educational arenas where this knowledge is shared or where we can learn about prevention. And the school districts and the teachers and people in positive roles, they're our biggest supporters and our partners in this fight against this.
Well, you know what? We don't live in a world of traditional family structure. A lot of times you've got single parents. Used to be in my generation the dinner table. You sat at the dinner table and, your parents could spot things in you right away and stuff like that. It doesn't really happen. Another thing, too, I imagine would be important is to be proactive about it. What ways can people be proactive about this?
As far as to identify if you get someone that's maybe coming into an issue, the biggest thing is, like you were just mentioning, is the dynamics of the family household are different than they were 30 years ago when I was a kid, or maybe a little bit longer. But you know what, is you need to stay in communication with your child. You need to develop that baseline to what's the norm for your child or your loved one, whoever may be susceptible to getting addicted to pain pills, or in the worst case scenario, heroin. Develop that baseline and notice changes in character, changes in behavior, and then to be brave enough to talk to this person about that, or if not that, to find guidance to say, hey, I've got some concerns. What's the best way to help my loved one?
Yeah, got it. You know what? When we were talking before we went on air, out of the norm was the phrase that you used to me. You know, if you're a parent, you see something out of the norm with your child, with your loved one, a coworker, a friend, a buddy. Act on it. If you're not proactive about it, then what's the worst thing that could happen? You're wrong.
You're right.
Yeah,
you're right. You'd rather err on the side of caution and try to do the right thing then, because later on you don't want to think about what come later on in heroin addiction.
You know, Bob, in an interview like this, it'd be easy to scare everybody. We could do that, but I think it's more informative and better for anyone that's watching this interview to understand, to be proactive and do what we just said. Because Bob did tell me what it was like to knock on the door of a house and have to inform a parent that the child is dead. So, and it's an epidemic. So, epidemic is out of control situation, and it's really time for the community to wake up and just participate to try to help you stem this, right?
We're just a part of it, Jesse. I mean, there's a lot of different components behind there. We have a lot of partners in this fight, and it goes from households to private entities, to the school districts, to just positive role models in society. We're just a small piece of the puzzle, but all of us working together, that's how we're going to solve this epidemic. Not just one standing on our own, but all of us working together.
I got it. Is there a hotline?
As far as our aspect, we're in the law enforcement business. We have 584 tips. If you have information about drug dealings or any concerns like that, you can call that anonymously.
Great.
If we need to, we can farm it out to the appropriate agency or entity.
You got it. All right, Lieutenant Jillson.
Yes.
Thanks very much for coming in. Really
welcome.
appreciate you coming and spending the time.
No problem.
That's 584 TIPS, TIPS. You see anything? Worst thing could be, you're wrong, and the best thing that could happen is you could save somebody's life. So again, thanks very much for coming in. And you're welcome anytime. Let's come in and talk about this until we nail this, baby, all right?
I'd like to see it go away sooner than later.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, to see this interview again, you can head to our website, looktvonline.com.